Hey everyone, welcome to another Ask the Trainer session. I hope you're all fine. And today I've got a few guests with me, as always. Today I'm joined by my wonderful colleagues and friends, Ellie, Noseman, and Darren. And we are going to talk about working with axes. But before we jump into that, I want to take care of the housekeeping, of course, because that's what we usually do. So when you go to maxon.net/events, you get to this page. You can also find it via news and events. And here we have all of the webinars and other events listed that we are doing or where we are participating. Today we have Ask the Trainer working with axes. As I already mentioned, tomorrow we will have another show of VFX and Chill. On Monday we are going to have another demystifying post-production webinar from our sculpt model render composite month. And then another thing that is really cool is that we are currently running another hands-on with Maxon series, Cinema 4D Level Up, done by Ellie and Matt. Ellie, do you want to say a few words about that? Oops. You're muted? They say you're muted? Oh, that is interesting. But everyone can hear me okay? Ellie is muted. Can't hear Ellie, but you can hear me. Okay, let me try to get this right. Oh, brilliant, 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 brilliant. Give me a second. Give me a second.
Is Noseman audible?
Now we should hear everyone. So, cool. What Ellie just said was just fantastic. But we don't have time to repeat. Well, I'm just kidding. So I was asking Ellie about the hands-on with Maxon, what we can expect from the next episode.
Yeah, so we're going to be diving into some motion stuff. So a bunch of the MoGraph tools, more in depth on the Voronoi fracture and looking at combining things, so layering fields, combining like rigid body dynamics, just to create some really sort of interesting and different setups. So it should be fun. Come check it out. Come hang with us.
Yeah,
that's a good 2 hours.
That sounds great. Then after that, the next one would be again Thursday, and because it's the 5th Thursday of June, we decided to do another Meet the Trainer special, where we are just going to chat about our, from back in the time when we were in production, and we're going to share maybe some tips, but also definitely a few stories. And also, just for the sake of completeness, the Thursday after that, we will have the next Max on Color show. All right, so as always, whenever you just forgot to tune in live or you want to rewatch one of the webinars, just go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, because this is the place where we host all of the recordings. And yeah, because we are at Ask the Trainer here, I also want to show the certification site. If you go to maxon.net/certification or learn certification, you can find this little page here where we have the Pro User certification and the Cinema 4D Trainer certification and the certification topics list, which you can see here. Well, not here, but here. And as you can see, it's quite extensive, and the plan for like our Ask the Trainer sessions at the moment is to just pick a topic, and you can also tell us which topics from the list to pick, and we're going to explain the stuff to the level that we're going to ask for during the pro user certification test. And other than that, I already want to tell you that we are really happy that you're joining us, and that's why we want to give away a free t-shirt. So in the chat, you will find in a second or so the link to this merch site and a coupon code that you can type in or copy in when you're opening up this page, and then you can pick one t-shirt for free, and you only have to pay for the shipping, which is quite cool. All right, so that being said, let's switch to Cinema 4D and let's talk a little bit about axes. So
before we start, am I audible to the audience?
Now everyone should be. I activated the audio for everyone.
Excellent.
So one thing I forgot, if you have questions, it would help us if you when you ask them in the chat that you type in capital question colon and then type your question. That makes it easier for us to filter that out. Just saying. Cool. Right. So we want to talk about axes. So what is an axis? It's pretty easy. That's basic stuff. Whenever you select an object or multiple objects, you've got this axis that can look like that, or like that, depending on which tool you're using. And what an axis is not just like a handle that you can use for moving around your objects, like so. It's also the center of rotation when you are in the rotate tool. And it's also the center of scaling when you're in the scale tool and scaling this whole thing. And today we want to share like a few tricks that you can use to improve your axis workflow. And I can tell you that when I learned some of this stuff, I implemented those things into my daily workflow, like starting the next day. And there's quite some cool stuff in there. And many people don't know that. So first of all, I want to go to edit preferences, and I want to show you some options that you have here. So if you go to viewport display, you can see that we have these handles, this handles section here. And this can be used, for example, to scale the axis up and down. That's something that many people just don't do. The axis bands here, with that checkbox, you can get rid of these very useful handles that allow you to move an object in a plane instead of just along one axis. Then when you're in the rotate tool, you can also adjust that cycle. Let me maybe deactivate the background here so we can see that cycle better, like so. So this cycle, for those of you who don't know, whenever you rotate an object and you start clicking and dragging inside of that circle, you can freely rotate the object. Let me undo this. If you do the same thing outside of the circle, you just rotate around the axis that is pointing towards the camera from here. Right, then we have the option to use rotation or to untick the rotation bands here. Then you just have like a circle up here and can use that for rotation. I would just leave that as is, but one thing that can be quite interesting is the rotation scale, which is the rotation band scale, where you can make this thicker or thinner. Right, so those are the options that you have here for the handles. And another thing that I want to show you is, like, sometimes, especially beginners have a hard time when they accidentally press the wrong button combination. In this case, it would be alt+d, and then the axis is gone. And whenever people select something in the object manager or here in the viewport, you can't see the axis again. This is because of the viewport filters There is one filter for the axis, and it's also the only one that has a shortcut assigned to it, and the shortcut is alt+d. So yeah, that's important to know because yeah, many beginners run into that trap at some point.
I toggle that a lot with Redshift.
Yeah, yeah. It's also a good thing to like get rid of the axis when you don't want to see it, especially when you use the viewport IPR in Redshift. Right, so the next thing, of course, is when you work with axes and you rotated an object, the whole axis is like also rotated in space. And sometimes you may want to get back to the original axis, or let's not say the original axis, but the axis that is aligned to the world axis. And it's important to know that there are two modes. One is world mode for axes, and the other one is, well, this is world mode. The other one was object mode. So this is object mode, this is world mode, and now you can move up and down, or left and right, or yeah, to the front or to the back. So sometimes that is important, and also it is important to know that Cinema 4D has got this sticky key behavior. So instead of toggling it with by pressing W, then doing something and then press W again, you can simply just press W and hold it. Then you do your modification, and after you're finished, you just release the W key. And this is possible with all of the shortcuts. So you can also do that, like for example, with the extrude tool or so, which is.
Can I say that I just want to point out that that does not change how numbers, how the values are displayed between object or world. It only changes how we can interact with it in the viewport.
Yeah, yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Right. So another thing that is cool here, and that's already the first thing that many people don't know. Let me make this a little bit more beautiful by bringing back the ground plane, and I'm gonna zoom in here. So it's way better. It's so beautiful, right? So we've got a lot of presents for you today, and the next one is already something that is worth being packaged as a present. So when you select multiple objects and you want to like move or scale or rotate them in one go, let's rotate them now. So now you can see that the axis that is being used is like the averaged axis of those three objects. So this axis is in the middle, right? But what you can also do is when you like want to select multiple objects, but you want to, let's say, rotate them around the axis of this object, you can do that. So what you can see here are those little gizmos of the other axes that we have available. And when I hover over them, you can also see that they are turning white. And now I can click an axis like that. And now my center of rotation, or my axis for this multi-selection, is here. And I can rotate around this thing. Same thing with scaling. And yeah, that's a pretty cool thing. And if I don't want that anymore, I can click this one again and I'm back. Right. Then there is another thing that I like a lot, especially with multi-selections. So usually this one is ticked off, but that's exactly what I want to show you. So when I rotate all of them in one go, like using this combined axis here in the middle. But I can also take per object transform. And what this allows me to do is that all of those objects will stay in place and they will just rotate in their place. And the same is possible. For example, when I go to the scale tool, I can just scale them like so. And you can already see that they are scaling into different directions because they are rotated into different directions. The funny thing here is that this also works in the move tool. I just switch to the move tool. And when I now enable per object transform and I move these objects up, you can see that they are moving into different directions. right? Because they are rotated. Right, so this is also something that many people don't know, but it's also something when I learned it, the next day I used it. It's such a cool thing to do and to use. Right, so until now we didn't really modify the axes of those objects. I just showed you how you can, when you have multiple objects selected, how you can pick different axes and like use them as the center of rotation or whatever you want to use it for. The next thing I want to show you is how you can adjust an axis, but I mean that's also pretty much very basic, but there are some things that are a little bit more advanced and very useful to know. For this, I want to go to display and change this to rotating with lines, and I'm also going to deactivate materials here so that we can see the topology better. I'm also going to deactivate the subdivision surface here. So what I'm going to do is I want to, first of all, this is the button for axis mode. So whenever I have this selected, I can move the axis around without moving the object, right? I can also use that in combination with snapping. For example, when I need this to snap to, let's say, this point, I can simply do that, right? All of the snapping works with in axis mode. Cool. Right, but when you bring this down to the components, you also have axes. So what I just worked with until now was the object axis. But as soon as you let me switch snapping off. As soon as you have like components selected, like multiple points or edges and so on, you also have this axis here. And one thing that is important to know is that you can like see the position of this axis here and also the rotation of this axis. That can be important. You cannot see this here in the coordinates of the object itself. You can only see it in the coordinates manager. Right. And there are some cool things that you can do with that. So the first thing, and let me select another area. I already pre-selected this part here. One thing that you can do, and let me get rid of the coordinates manager, and let me also use the rotate tool here. So the shortcut is R, by the way. One thing that I use quite a lot is the modeling axis when I model. So whenever you have a selection, you can adjust the axis of that selection using those sliders. There's only one limitation with that, and that is that these parameters here are limited to the area inside of the bounding box of the selection. So if you want to have another center of rotation here, this doesn't work. So if you want this back here as the center of rotation, for example. Right, but what you can do already is you could place that, let's say, here. Let's move it up, and now you could rotate this whole part up like that.
Those sliders are cool, but they are sort of fidgety to mess with, aren't they?
Yeah, so another thing that I love to do, and that's really something that I learned like half a year or a year ago, is that you can use axis mode to define the axis. And you can see when I'm in axis mode, whenever I hover one of the components here, they will get a highlight. So this is the point, this is an edge, this is a polygon here, and I can, let's say, select this edge here, and then this edge will be used as the modeling axis. I cannot rotate it right now. So that was
just like a click.
Yeah.
Just a click, and it just temporarily snaps it to that.
Yeah. Then I have to leave axis mode, and now I can rotate this part around this around this modeling axis, around this edge. So the fastest way to do that is by being in one of the component modes and then use the sticky key behavior for axis mode. So you just like press the L key and you keep it pressed, and then you, let's say, click this one here, and then you release the L key, and you can see as I release the L key, I'm going to press it again and hold it. We are in axis mode, and as I release it, now you can see that it's disabled again. And now I can move this part of the object or rotate it around this axis, which can be quite helpful.
News for you. I got news for you, Jonas. Are you ready?
Sorry?
I have some amazing news for you. Are you ready?
I am ready. I am always ready.
You do not have to toggle the axis mode.
You do not?
You don't. You can just click it. If you're in move, scale, or rotate, go ahead. Just you click the point or edge or polygon, and the axis will temporarily snap to it.
No.
It does on my machine.
Okay. That's weird, because then actually it should select something. Do you have anything else enabled? Any other mode?
No. Actually, I have some updated news for you, Jonas. Are you ready again?
I'm ready again.
I made a mistake.
Okay.
You do need axis mode on. And I had it on, but I thought I turned it off and did it.
Right. So that happens. That happens.
Yeah.
And this is why we call those sessions not only training sessions, but entertainment sessions.
Yes.
However, I mean, it would have been cool. Good. So this is a very useful thing. Let me check my list here, because I wanted to show you something else. All right, resetting an axis based on another object. So let's say, for example, oh no, I forgot another thing. So let me go to that ball here. So another thing you can do, and this is also quite useful. So when you select one polygon on this object here, you can see that the z-axis or z-axis, depending on where you are, is pointing like towards normal direction. So you can immediately start moving this polygon in normal direction. But as soon as you select multiple polygons, you can see that it's snapping back to like the object spacing. I adjusted the axis of this one so that it's like in world space. But what you can do to make this work again, you always have like options for the position of the axis. So even now I can set it to the object's axis, for example, and I have many more options. Selected is quite useful here, so I leave it. And here under orientation, we can always set it to normal. And now it will use the average normal for the z-axis. And now I can move everything in normal direction. Another thing that is quite useful here is when you take along normals, you will move all of the polygons along their own normals and not.
Is that the
average
same
normal.
as the normal move?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
Okay, right. So then there is another thing that I wanted to show, and let me just move this box out of here, and let's go to model mode, and we're going to use another object here. We're going to create a null, and let's move the null here. So if you make the box a child of the null, you can use the null for adjusting the axis. Like you can adjust the box's axis so that it's fitting to the parent. And I mean, this is like a small workaround. You could do that in using snapping, for example, if you go to axis mode and now you could snap to the axis of the null. But another thing you can do once it is a child, you can go to the coordinates manager and just zero out these position coordinates, and this will make it so that the axis is now in the position of the null's axis. So this can also be helpful sometimes. Right, and then another thing that many people don't know is that, well, most of the people think that a primitive has a fixed axis and you cannot adjust it, but you can. So let me quickly bring back my shading here. And what I want to show you is I want to create a cube, and I want to make it, let's say 20 by 20 by 20. And I want to move it, let's say, here. So you can see that the axis is in the middle here, and there is no option to adjust the axis. But here's the thing. There is a way to do that when you go to the asset browser. And in the asset browser, we have, a few things.
We can't see the categories because our pictures are covering it up.
Sorry?
We can't see the categories because our pictures are covering them up.
Oh, right. Let me fix that.
You can detach the asset manager.
Okay, there we go. So now it should work. Cool. So what I then do usually is I go to nodes, and in here, I go to geometry modifiers. And what these are node-based assets that you can use also in the object manager here to procedurally adjust stuff in your objects, like modeling operations like insets and extrudes and stuff like that. But you can also adjust the object's axis. And this works with every object, including primitives. So what I typically do is when I'm in the geometry modifier category, I go to list mode and make the list very small. And then there's one that is called geometry axis. And the way it works is pretty much the same as a deformer in terms of like where you have to put it. And now you can see that the geometry axis modifier is a child of the cube, and I can simply adjust the axis here. So let me adjust the cube's position to be y0. And now, no matter what I do here in the cube parameters, I can scale it up, I can scale it down. It will always be on the ground. And it will just grow from there. And this also gives you even more stuff to play with. For example, there is something that is called the transform element modifier. And if you place that before the geometry axis, what you can do is when you play with the rotation here, you can rotate it in a way so that it's always on the ground, which is really cool. So you can use that technique for animating a cube along a surface. We already showed that in other webinars, but this is how you would do it. All right, so that's everything I have for now. Does anyone have anything to add? I take that as a no. Noseman, are you ready?
I was born ready.
So that there is a question.
Yeah. We'll take the question first.
About can you real quick just point out, because I said this out loud but we didn't show it, the normal move. I said that's the same thing as normal move, and you said yeah.
I did. Yes.
And that's actually in Polygon mode. When you have a polygon selected, you right click, and then you have some specific commands for moving, scaling, and rotating based on the normal transformation at the bottom.
At the bottom,
Yeah, there you go.
Normal transformation.
Yep.
Okay, so here we
Yeah.
have normal move. Yeah, I usually get it from here because when you're in Polygon
Cool.
mode, for example, you can also use the normal rotate and normal scale from here.
Oh, they put him over there. That's awesome.
Jonas, can you pull up the pop-up window because it was cropped in the video?
Which pop-up?
The normal transforms, the little window. Just right-click and show all the tools available because they were
yeah,
cropped.
here. Okay. Does it work when I click here? No, it doesn't. Okay.
You can pop it out, can't you?
Pop it out. Yeah,
I'm
you just
pop
go.
it out. All right. So here we go. And here in the bottom, here normal move, normal rotate, normal.
Yeah, those three you can. Yep, that's the ones I was talking about. Yeah. So we had a question about, well, how someone asked how do you scale? I think it was Joel, based on the normal. So there's the normal scale option.
Yeah.
There. So.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's how you would do it.
Thanks, Jonas.
Cool. So, yeah, Thanasis was born ready, so I'm going to switch to Thanasis now, right? I'm still going to ask you again. Are you ready?
I am ready.
I'm ready. So you get the screen in 3, 2, 1. There you go.
Boom. So we need to start with the basics. This is an axis, and these are axes, right? So be very careful with your grammar here. And axes is the plural of axes, as far as I know, in some language. So with that dad joke out of the way, if I start looking around, I have notes on this side, and I have the feedback on this side, and I have the YouTube stream on that side. So plus the ADHD. So a couple of things. Jonas mentioned that you can do the per object manipulation when you go to the rotation over here. And let me show you the application of it and how it works in relation to other functions. So I have here a hierarchy. I have a cube with the axes here, well, a flattened box. I have this one that has the axes over here, and this one has the axes over here, right? And this would be a typical finger setup. Now, if you select them all, and you go to the rotations and the coordinates, and you rotate, and it's always not the one I select first. You can see that we can just rotate these in one swift move and make our finger sort of curl. If we want to do that interactively, the way the tools work, because the axis happens to be in the average position, you won't be able to do it interactively. And there is where per object transform comes into play. You turn it on and you can do the same thing we did before just by rotating the gizmo. And you can add the other tip that Jonas said, just go here so you can see the whole finger from its base. It won't change anything. It's just that it allows you to do this more gracefully, I would say. So yeah, that's one of the applications when you want to interactively do the equivalent of selecting all these and just changing their local rotations. So that's number one. Number two, and this is going to start from a blank screen, excuse me. So let's go to the modeling counterpart, and let's fold some paper. I'm going to create a piece of paper, and I'm going to go and add no elements here, and just these 4 over here. I'm going to make it a bit narrower and make it editable. So sometimes we want to do some sort of folding of paper, and the sticky key and the rotations and all that is going to allow us to do this very quickly and interactively. Select your polygons and press L and hold it and click on this, and I'm going to rotate all these. Then I'm going to deselect this. I'm going to press L, hold it, and click here, rotate this. And then I'm going to deselect this, and then press L, click on this, and now I'm going to rotate this. So you don't have to really think, oh, where's the axes? What am I selecting? And each of these panels retains its shape. So that's a very quick way of folding things when you're modeling. Excellent. So
not great for animating, though, right?
No. The thing with animation, excellent point, Darren. If I add a PLA, for example, keyframe from here and here, what's going to happen is that the interpolation happens linearly because it just moves the points. The fact that we used rotation to move the points, and I'm very precise with my language, we are using rotation or scaling or moving. In all three of the application of these tools, we are essentially just moving points, but we move them using a different way. For example, rotation. So there is no rotation component if you set a PLA point level animation keyframe. What will happen is that let's activate the PLA just to show you. So one keyframe here, I'm going to go here and rotate these all the way here and add another keyframe. You will see that it will happen linearly because only the positions get rotated, not the method by which we did this. If you want to do the whole animation and unfold things, that's a totally different story. You probably use joints or stuff like that. And yeah, thanks for bringing it up, Darren. Now let me refer to my my notes. Now, another thing which is more so that I can show off my infinite knowledge about things is I found out the hard way. Sometimes when we go to axes mode and we move the axes, we assume that internally Cinema 4D is just moving the axes. That's not the case. Internally, what happens is that the object moves as a whole in one direction, and then the points just move in the opposite of the amount that you've moved the whole object, and gives us the illusion that only the axis is moving. And the reason I say that is if anyone is interested in scripting or doing stuff like that with Python or whatnot, you cannot just move the axes. You have to move the whole object and then counter move all the points to their original positions. So I just want to say that because it makes me look smarter than I am. So let's close these. And we have the fingers here. And the next thing on my notes, right. The other thing an axis is useful for is that all the components of an object, all the point positions of an object are always in relation to its axes. So again, our famous cube, make it editable. The position of these points in as they are stored inside the object, inside memory, is always in relation to the axes. So what's going to happen if I go to this point here, go to the coordinates, and well, I can't see the coordinates. I meant these coordinates here. So the coordinate manager, you can see every time I select a point or double click on a point for that matter, you can see the coordinates. You see it's all hundreds, right? Now, if I go and in object mode, I move my axes out here, what you will see is that the same points are going to have totally different values, right? You see it switch. So the axis is that generic parent component of every object from which all other objects take their relative positions. So just remember that when you're modeling and so forth, that the point positions are always in relation to the axes of the object. Okay, and the other thing that Jonas touched upon, and why we can't essentially, without the use of some sort of tool, move the axes for a procedural object. As an explanation, I just want to explain this. It's very simple. It's because this is the point that's used to generate the geometry of our primitive. So this precedes everything else that you see here. The points and the polygons generated when we create any primitive object rely on on knowing where the axis is. So when I move the axis itself, I can't move it in relation to the points because the points are generated based on the axes. It's a one-way thing. So with all this very interesting and maybe not so useful information, let's continue with some things that may be interesting. So folding papers. Another nice little tip for entertainment reasons is when you go when you try to change your display and you change the rotation bands and all that. The best use case for this is to go to your colleague's computer, mess around with these to make your rotation bands huge, and don't tell them and see their reaction. Just pull out your cell phone and shoot the video while they open up and see those huge bands and all that. So I think that's the best application of changing the UI. Generally do stuff like move around this axis. You can fix things. You can save other default startup layouts, and I think that's part of the fun with the Cinema 4D, messing with your colleagues.
And
So-
that would be a version of messing with your colleagues that won't break their scenes. There are many more methods, but they will break the scenes. So
Yes, we advise against that. If you want to do it, we told you don't break your colleagues' scenes.
No.
Mess with them
So
without.
this is like the kosher way to like mess with your colleagues' scenes.
that's a good way to put it. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we never said this. We're going to remove it from the video. No, we're not. So let's talk about the axes center. So first of all, what do I have here? Oh, let's go for some simple stuff. All right,
Wait a minute. Did you just say the axes center?
Yes, the axes center tool. I said the
Oh my
axes
God.
center.
You're blowing
gonna-
my mind, dude.
I'm going to leave this for the end to retain users here, because this is extremely interesting. Look at that. It has all these buttons and so forth. So now I'm going to say more mundane things. Something that occurs very often is we get a bunch of objects here, and you can go and select each one and see this one has a certain scaling. Someone was messing with things using the object mode. So the scaling was affected. Look at all these different things. So and I want to put some order in all this thing, and I'm going to try a few things. I'm going to say, oh, 1, 1, 1. So now we have this, and the sizes are pretty different. We have smaller objects, we have bigger objects. No, this is not what I want. So first of all, let's do something about the scaling. And I want to reset the scale, but not change the size of these. And one of the things you'll find in the tools and in the axes drop down over here is the reset scale. Now, by default, you see it has the gear icon. Always click on the gear icons. There's always interesting stuff there. If I just go here and do this, then what this is going to do, it's going to, I'm going to undo. And the reason is so this is the default setting. Default setting is compensate points off, reset child objects on. So I'm going to do it without compensate. And that's the same as going and just resetting these little things. We're back to our original problem. Well, I have already revealed the secret, and that is click on the gear icon, compensate points, and then everything is going to go to 1, 1, 1, but without affecting the how the object looks. So all the points are going to retain their positions. Extremely handy when you're receiving. Maybe you open 3 different CAD files. Each CAD file was created with a different scale, and things are bigger and smaller, and you just sort of scale them down, but then you forgot that you had the object mode, or you did something, a mistake, or someone else a mistake, and they provide you the scenes. This is a very simple way of just normalizing everything.
Yeah, it's also important when you have like object scales that are non-uniform. And then maybe you might have, like, are you going to show this? Or am I just taking away what you wanted to show? No. So,
Jonas, everything that's mine is yours. Don't worry.
Oh, that's cool. Right. So when you have an object and that object is scaled non-uniformly, and you have another object in there as a child of that object, which is scaled non-uniformly, but the other way around, it can cause problems that are like you rotate the object and then suddenly it will stretch or so. So whenever something like that happens, the reset scale is the remedy for that.
Look at that. I mean, this is interesting. You can do something like this and it's fun. But if you want to use proper objects, it's not fun. So you just select this, you make sure that children and compensators, okay, is on, okay, now they're both normalized, and you can rotate it without the we factor. I prefer the we factor, though, to be honest with you. So this is what Jonas said, unless Jonas, you were saying something else, and I totally missed the point.
No, you
No?
didn't miss the point. I said exactly that. And I'm
Okay.
all in for sound effects.
Wonk, 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 wonk. So where was I? Yeah, you're distracting me. So where was I? Reset skip. So it's something that doesn't relate to the axes that much, but nonetheless, it relates to coordinates, and coordinates talk about axes. They inform the act. Anyhow, so I have this bunch of objects. I want to see what each object is. And this is something that Jonas did as a quick tip. And I always like to plagiarize his stuff. So let's just reset these, or do whatever we want. Or you can go here and reset transform. But there's some shortcuts for the reset transform, which I'm not aware of. I just found out a few days ago from Jonas. A reason we set these up is we don't really care about our users. It's because it allows us to teach each other in the training team, right? We're a very close-knit clique here. So,
although I have to admit that whenever I can teach you stuff, I feel like, yeah, cool, now I can do anything.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you. So let's reset the transform here. So everything is reset. Now I want to spread these out. Let me take a measurement of this, how big it is. It's about 40, 50 or something like that. So what you do, you select all your objects, and you can use some variables in the coordinates in the attributes. And the one we're looking for is num. This num, which you will find it somewhere in the help. I'm not going to tell you where, so you can have some nice time. And we are going to multiply this num.
Wait, you want us to search the help for NUM?
I don't even know. Yeah, it's going to have 25 million hits. So this num is nothing more than the index of the object in a particular list. The first object is 0. The num variable is 0. The second one is 1. So it's a 0-based, let's say, ascending number. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, any objects in the object manager. And now I can do a multiplication and say, oh yeah, I'm going to put 100. So what this says is that the first object is going to be in position 0 times 100, which means 0. The first one is going to be 1 times 100. The other one 2 times 100. So now when I press enter, we can get these on the x-axis spaced out by 100. And that's, I don't know if anyone in the chat has actually done this manually, like typing in all these. Just post there for giggles. So that is another little tip. And of course, Jonas has said it, but I just want to repeat what he says. So let's get now to the interesting stuff, the axis center. So this, what you're seeing here now, is actually, it relates to one of the questions we have for the certification. And I have to say, most people fail this question. And I take special pride for making very simple concepts that people struggle with. Some people call this sadism or something. I don't listen to my shrink. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So here's the particularity with this setup. I've purposely messed up the axes. Rotations, positions, and all that. So they're both messed up. And I want to find a way to put these, fix this puzzle. So this is an 8-year-old's puzzle. Where does this go on top of this, and how does it fit? But you have to do it in Cinema 4D. And the only way to do that is if you manage to find an axis that is the correct one based on the geometry. Now, this particular geometry is rotationally symmetrical, so it's a perfect circle. You may not be able to use this technique if you don't have a few proper quote-unquote anchor points, proper polygons or edges or points you can rely on, because this is what we're going to do over here. So let me show you the method. One of the most, the parts of the model which has the best stability, because we have this flat surface up here, would be the top row of polygons. If I go to polygon mode, I've already selected these to spare you the trouble of watching me selecting them. While you're listening to me talking about it, which takes more time. Anyhow, and I want to use this loop of polygons to align the axes in some way that gives me at least the flatness or some sort of rotation. I'm going to bring up the axes center tool. You can leave this floating here. It's a model window. And let's do a quick overview of this window. Shall I put it on the left? I think our images are here.
I love
Can you
this.
see?
I just deleted them.
Oh, come on. I was going to do a funny thing where I was going to place this here and people will be like, we can't see what you're doing.
Okay, just for your joke. Here you go.
Oh, right. Thank you very much. So pretend I didn't say that before, and I'm trying to show you the attribute. We're getting silly here.
What a joke.
I'm getting. Yeah. So
I feel like all the time we saved in you not selecting those polygons, we just don't even matter anymore.
But you know that I can do that.
Oh, yes.
Troll me. Okay. So the axis center. The axis center allows you to adjust the axes of a polygon object, an editable object, based on some parameters of its components, polygons, edges, and points. And it has predominantly the center, which will center the position of the axes based on whatever you're doing here. And it has the alignment, which will rotate it and align it to certain of these parameters. And I'm going to ignore center for now, because I'm actually, you know, something, I'm doing it the opposite way around. I'm going to go to a new scene and make my famous cube, press C and activate, not the shading, this is too bright. And just so that you can see what the default state is, we are going to, here's what the question and the answer that this panel provides. I want to center my axes to the center of all points based on the percentage of the extremes of the extreme plus X are these points. The extreme minus X are these points here, the lowest X value of the points. And the same thing for the Y. The extreme Y values are the ones on top, the extreme minus are the ones on the bottom, and so forth. And this way I can say, I want my axes to be on the lowest Y point of this model, and I want it to be at the average of X and Z, the midpoint. And if I execute, this is how we make the axes go right at the bottom.
But why execute?
You can always click the auto update and see this executing live.
Sorry.
Wow. So that's what it does, auto update. I like to do execute because I'm a control freak. I want to tell the software what to do. I don't want the software to do it when it wants to, right? So this is how I keep on top of Cinema 40. I let it do
You tell
as
me.
little as possible. So that's the number one thing. Now, the other thing we can do, and you have certain, you can center the object to that particular thing. So instead of moving the axes, it's moving the points to that particular point. So play around with these, go to the help, and there's a lot of interesting things you can do. You can do it based on a selection, so you can select a polygon and center the axis to that polygon. Anyway, it's fun. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to undo a couple of times and go here.
Can I make a point?
You can always make a point, Darren.
This is so incredibly valuable, especially with imported files from other, from third-party programs, especially from Illustrator. It's less of a deal now because we've got some, great features in MoGraph, but it is the best way to set the axis for like all the parts of your Illustrator logo so that they're centered on each path rather than all together.
Precisely. And it is part of the test. You need to know the ins and outs of the axis center. So just to augment Darren's point, you draw a spline. Okay. And you want to make a new ornamental glass or something like that. So here's your spline. The axis happens to be somewhere in the center. I want to take the axis and put it right at the bottom, right? Right at the bottom of this thing. All you have to do is this. There you go. Maybe you want to put it at the extreme X just to put it closer to here. So you want to click 3 times instead of pressing L and drag it, right? So yeah, you can press L and drag it. There you go. So this now allows you to go and reset the coordinates, and you have a nice little centered thing which you can put under a lathe and make a beautiful ornamental. I need to close this. My eyes are...
And here you're doing this with like one object, but when you have like, 50 or 100 splines selected, you can do it for all of them simultaneously.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Watch this, everyone. Watch this. How do you make a lot of splines? You put them under a cloner. And what do you do after that? You make it editable. We have all these things now. I want to go for each and every one of them and put it on the bottom left. You select them all and you press the same button and you're done. That's what Darren said with too many words, because I met okay. All right. Let's I'm losing my train of thought here.
Sorry.
So no, keep going. I love that. It allows me to say silly things with a good excuse. So let's move on to always be in component mode when you're doing this. You don't need to, but when you're going to use the other things. So we can center on the polygon. That's what I was saying before, execute. So if you go to object mode, it's centered based on these and that selection, right? It went. Now, always be aware where the axes are. For some polygons, for example, in this particular case, the Z, because it's a normal, it's pointing in the object's X. So always be aware when you're dealing with polygons, the axes may be pointing in a different way, because the axis uses the normal direction as the Z, and everything else adjusts and so forth. So what if I want, now you can see that in this particular case, the Z is pointing this way. I'm going to go here and execute. And you can see my axes, the X is pointing that way. So my axes didn't adapt as far as the alignment, because this is off. So let me just zero these out, put it in its usual state. I'm going to turn it off. It's the OCD. I want everything to be in its default state before I turn it off. I'm not very fast at production. So in the alignment, what you can do, let's first center it on this polygon. So just do that. And now our axis is centered based on that polygon. I want to align it. I said all points, sorry. I want to align the axis of the object to this polygon. So if I select the polygon and say execute, immediately my axis gets aligned. Look at that. It changed direction to be aligned to this polygon here. And for a cube, you can't really see the difference, but you can actually align your axes if you have another object which you want to do something with, like let's take a cylinder with very few elements, let's say 6. And for some odd reason, you want this to lie on the floor on this, and you don't want to figure out the math to rotate it. So I'm going to make it editable. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to center it to the selected polygon, and I'm going to align it to that polygon as well. So now my axis is right there where I want it, which means that if I go now in object mode and reset all my axes, there it is. And one of the things is
ding, 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 we have a winner.
Bing, bing, bing.
Sorry, I asked the question earlier. How do you type out axis and plural? And you just said it. Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, I did. I didn't even think about it. These things come natural to me. So one thing with the orientations, you may be 90 degrees off your preferred axes, but it's only going to be 90 degrees off. So even if you wanted it to be upside down, that's not a big of a deal, because all you have to do now is just rotate it, press shift to quantize, and go 180 degrees, and there you go. And if you want to rotate your axes back, just select the axis itself and reverse this, or click on one of the reset transforms and all that kind of stuff. So at least you will be assured that you're going to be about 90 degrees off in any of the axes, but it does allow you to align objects properly. Talking about quantizing, this is what is it? I'm going digression of a digression, right? This is a root system. We're creating a system of roots where I say one thing, I go to another, and I totally lose my train of thought. But I'm going to talk about quantization. Shift C because you can find it somewhere here, but I can't bother. Shift-C for the commander and type Quantize, right? And we have the Quantize move slider, the Quantize scale slider, and the Quantize rotate slider. And when I want to do modeling, because I can't bother saving a layout, you just take them and grab them and put them up here. And now you have your quantizing parameters here. So you can say, I want quantization. Anyway, I dragged something I shouldn't have. I want to quantize 90 degrees. So now if I press shift, it goes 90 degrees. So just by changing the numbers, that allows you to do interesting stuff. Standard. Let's go back to this, and let's backtrack to my original thing. I'm done with this. I'm done. There we go. So back to our original problem.
That was just a little sidetracking.
Oh yeah, no, nothing. Yeah, usually I can go for days, if not for weeks. So we have this loop, which seems to be quite symmetrical. Sometimes you can get away with the 4 edges, or if they're vertical and all that. With CAD models, this works nicely if you want to align a gear, because you have all those vertical edges of the gear. But here it's a more organic model. And I'm going to pull up my axes center. And let's go and do something here. What I want to do is, first of all, turn off the center. I want to align my axes to the normals of these polygons. And what you will see in this particular case, that I get extremely good alignment. So my axes, my object axes now, despite where it lies over here, it is properly aligned to that thing. And we're going to see it in a moment. It's actually perfect. I don't know if it has any mathematical inaccuracies in the point of 0.001, but it looked fine when I did it. The next course of action is to center it. And let's go now with these 2 actions done. Let's go to the object. Let's go here and reset the transform. Now let's see if everything looks good. And you can see it's sitting nicely orthogonally without any problem. We do have a minor issue, though. Its rotation is arbitrary, all right, where these lie. So I can see it's symmetrical. It has this 4-point symmetry. That means that if I take one of the extreme edges, I think it's this one, and align it to this little bugger, I may be able to do something. And for that, we're going to use something called the axes extension. We need sound effects. So this is the moment where we need some really serious anticipation music. So yeah, but first of all, the guy was Austrian. You're German. So try something more German. Was Bach German? I think he was.
You're now throwing me under the bus.
How dare you? So let's continue with this. So I want to align this little point here, this one here, with one of my axes, whatever that is. So there is a function which is sort of hidden. It has a few issues, but it's so powerful. So do that. Go to your rotation tool. Press the control key on the PC or the command on the good computers and right click. So I'm going to press control. I'm going to right click and then release both the mouse and the control key. That's very important. This gives you this extended axis, which doesn't do anything unless you click your left mouse button and rotate it. And it always aligns to a single plane. You can only rotate one of the bands using it. So I'm going to use this in conjunction to snapping. So I can take this and rotate it arbitrarily and snap it over here. So let's do that. Let's go and turn on snapping. My favorite way is Shift S, and or you can click on this. Now, if you click here, you get this, but this is not a floating one. What I do is I go old school. All right, I was born before humans stepped on the moon. Press P for snap. Oh, I can't really do that. I used to be able to do snap. And when you, this has exactly the same settings as this, by the way. And what I'm going to do, I need point snapping because I'm going to get a point. The other thing I need is grid work plane snap because I want to snap it on this. And now I have all the components I need. So control, right click, and release, do that, right? See, I can move the mouse, but my hands are here. Look, I'm not touching anything. And now I'm going to go to this point here. I'm going to click my left mouse button and drag it over here. So I have perfectly aligned that point to this. Now my axis is off, but my model is right where I want it to. So let's turn off the snapping. Let's get rid of all that. And all I have to do is go to axes and zero out any odd rotations. And now I have a model which is aligned properly. Let's do the same thing for this. Again, I'm going to go to polygon mode. I think the bottom one looks a bit more symmetrical. Let's go and pull up the axis center tool. Let's first align it to the normals of the selection. Then let's go and center it to all points. And now let's go and see the mess I made. Go to points. Oh, it went right to the top because it was the opposite. So yeah, I had it minus, and that's the one thing with the rotations. The normal it calculated for the alignment happened to have just the opposite. But again, if I'm 90 degrees off, I can always go and fix these things. First of all, I can do this. There you go. And let's go and reset this. Excellent. Again, 90, 180 degrees. No one really cares. There we go. 180 degrees. Let's move this down. And I need to do the rotation thingamadoodle, right? Remember that? And I can do it down here. And I think I can do it down there. Yep, I can do it down here. Let me go to the top view. You can see it's perfectly aligned. No problem. Always check these things before you start moving stuff around. The only reason I'm saying that is because I do that mistake all the time. So bring it up, hide the other object. There we go. So we can see clear things. What do we want to bring where? So I want to bring that one to the left, all right? So I want to bring this one over here. Go to rotation. And then you have, let's turn on snapping. Let's press Control, right click. Extend the axes, right? Again, hands. Click on this and drag it onto the line. And let's turn off snapping. Let's turn off, what else do we need to turn off? Let's close this. Let's go and align our axes. And now we have an object that is precisely where we need it to be. And we're going to go to the final execution of this. So how do I bring this to be welded over there? Well, it's not all that difficult, but nonetheless, you can move the points. Because we have the axes in the right positions, let's go to the top object. Let's go to points mode. Let's select all the points. Let's turn on our snap ping. Oh, I did it this time. And we're going to enable snapping. No grids or all that. Just point snap and get this and move it here. Right? That's it. You move the points and everything is welded fine. Another thing you could do to make your lives a bit harder, which is something I always enjoy, is you go to object mode, you press with snapping L, and you bring your axes here, then you move the axes down, and then you weld these and you put it back in the center and all that. So if you are being paid by the hour, this will be the preferred method.
That is absolutely the best way to do it. In object mode, hit the L key and connect the axis to a point, turn off axis mode with snapping enabled, and then just snap it to the other bit.
Yep.
Best way.
And yeah, and then we're going to weld these two things, and we're going to do all sorts of other nice stuff.
So one thing that I
one
thing that I like about this example is that at some point you can also, like, you don't really have to, well, you have to align the axes at some point, but once you have those two parts, with the correct alignment, you can also solve the rest using axis extensions sometimes.
Exactly. So
right. So what Noseman showed is not only like the axis extensions before, but what I really like about this method that you showed is that, or how how much you can take advantage of snapping, because it's not just snapping to points. You can use all of these components that you have available, like the grid points, the grid lines. You have axes. You can also use axis extensions with snapping, for example, to make something point exactly to another object, or just parts of objects, like selected components to point perfectly to another axis or grid point, and so on. And
got a video on that on Cineversity, and I just posted the link to it.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I also recorded a quick tip on that at some point.
And now the interactive presentation of what Jonas just said. So select both and connect objects and delete. Right? Fantastic. Anyway, both the same color. I don't care. Connect object and delete. Nonetheless. So I want to do it without axes, and I want to show off. Again, showing off to your colleagues is a very healthy thing. Move tool. Yeah. So what I'm going to do, because I have my my snapping already selected. When you double click with your move tool, you select the island. All right. It's just like select connected. So let's grab this little bugger here and let's put him here. And then I click here to put the axes there. So again, let me get the same selection. Axes, click here, turn off axes, rotate, control, right click. Look, Ma, no hands. And then you try and find which is the point you need to rotate. Oops, what did I just do? I lost it. Again, look, Ma, no hands. And let's go here and rotate it. Boom, done.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how you do it. So yeah, always don't forget when you're modeling to optimize. Anyway, this is a subject for another Ask the Trainer, advanced modeling. So let me look down my list. You can post any questions, or you can tell us how much you love us and how you're addicted to the show. Reset, scale, we showed that. Access, we showed that. Yeah. I have nothing else. We overrun. We were planning for around a 40-minute webinar, and we overrun by 15 minutes.
Well,
yeah, I think it's the jokes.
I told you so.
Yes, you did. Show our faces. Let the people indulge in beauty and symmetry. And
yeah.
Is Jonas still there? Yeah.
I'm here. I'm here.
So, there you go.
Right. Cool. So if there are no more questions.
Yeah, put our big faces there. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, wait. No, I'm not going to put our big faces here. I'm going to do some additional housekeeping again for the end. So let's switch to my screen. Here we go. All right. So, well, I hope you really found this useful. I think although the topic of like working with axes might not be the sexiest in the first place, you can do so many things with what you saw today, especially when it comes to troubleshooting scenes or messed up models or imported CAD files, as Noseman said. So for me, learning all of that stuff was something that helped me a lot also in production. So yeah, let's start the housekeeping again. If you want to watch more of our webinars, you can always go to maxon.net/events, and you will get to the site here where we have all of the upcoming events here. Like tomorrow, there's going to be another VFX and Chill with Hashi and Seth. On Monday, we are going to have another demystifying post-production webinar, and Sculpt Model Render Composite is the topic of this month. Then next Wednesday, there is going to be the hands-on with Maxon session that is going to be done by Ellie and Matt, Cinema 4D Level Up Part 4. And then also next week, our next Ask the Trainer is a Meet the Trainer special where we're going to talk even more fun stuff
about ourselves.
About ourselves and other stuff. Yeah.
Can I add something? And
Yeah.
please, to all our viewers, suggest things. Right? We all have public presence. Maxon has a public presence. Just or send an email to training@maxon.net. Is it training? I don't want to give a wrong email. training@maxon.net.
You can also write to askthetrainer@maxon.net. We have a dedicated email address for that.
You can find me on Twitter @NosemanGR, NOSEMANGR. Yeah, Noseman, the Greek. And ask for suggestions and all that. We like to make the shows appeal to you. I know that we can just sit here, this team, and joke around, and that's going to be extremely entertaining and always educational, right?
Yeah.
But please suggest things. We want to know what you struggle with. We want to provide you help.
Yeah.
We don't want any artist to struggle when they're trying to do their job and enjoy what they're doing. So, and we think we can help, and we are here to help you all.
Yeah. So I'm gonna get to that like an inspiration for topics that you might want to choose. And right now I am at the certification site on the Maxon website that you can find when you go to Learn Certification, and then you can find out all of the stuff about our Cinema 4D user and trainer certifications, including like extensive FAQ that we added recently. And also in here, there is this list of certification topics, and I already have that open. You can see the list is quite extensive and is meant as an inspiration for you to come up with questions or stuff that you want to learn like in depth to get to the level where you would like pass the pro user certification test. But not limited to that, of course.
I would like to suggest, go through the list, can you open up one, Jonas? Just open anything up. When you say understanding material fundamentals, what do you mean? Right? That's a question we would like to hear, right? Just go through the list and ask specific things. Please don't say, what do you mean about every single topic of the topic list? You have to do some work, right?
Yeah.
You have to do some
Actually,
work.
I would like them to ask you that, Thanasis.
I would like everyone to ask me that. I agree.
Perfect. Yeah. Also, we want to thank you that you attended. And in the chat, I think we can post the link to the merch shop again, right? And the coupon code that you can use to order one t-shirt for free, and you will only have to pay for the shipping. So I think this will land in the chat in a second. Yeah.
Shipping is around $2,000, but that's a good t-shirt. You'll save $20.
It's not just a good t-shirt, it's also a good shipping company. All right. So, yeah, I think we have it. We only overran by, let's say 20 minutes because we had some technical hiccup in the beginning. Yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks Ellie, Noseman, Darren for being here and sharing stuff. Also, thanks Michelle for doing stuff in the chat in the background. And that's it. I don't have anything more. I wish you all a good rest of the day, a great week. Tune in to our other webinars and have a lot of fun. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.